How tough is real wilderness survival? Do you think they just munch on wild veggies or sit around eating ants? True experts have incredible hunting skills. They hunted a wolf, relished roasted wolf meat, caught big fish, and even had a beautiful woman join them. They grilled fish in the shelter, caught wild rabbits, and enjoyed tasty stew in an iron pot, all while surviving in the snowy mountains. It's like a vacation. By the 10th day, Wes and his group were so hungry that even after eating some cactus, the ants on the ground looked appetizing. Jermaine was shocked when Wes suggested eating ants, so he tried one and found it tasted worse than boogers. Wes, however, kept picking them up and eating them. Despite this, Wes's team has had the most comfortable time, having hunted a wolf and enjoyed its meat, even making bone soup. But they're still not satisfied with Jack's next plan. The plan was to catch fish, but Vaz was more interested in the crayfish in the stream. Fish or crayfish, as long as they caught something, it was fine. Vaz set his traps in the water, hoping for crayfish. There were plenty of trout, and Sarah was making fishing gear to catch them. Having already eaten wolf meat, catching fish wasn't crucial, the mindset was key. Sarah kept looking for a fishing spot in the snow, while Wes and his group were starving. Jermaine has been hunting rabbits, but his traps haven't caught any. Sarah's fish trap isn't ready yet either. These setbacks have shaken their group's confidence. Wes spends his days collecting wood, while Sarah lounges around, hoping to win the prize by doing nothing. Wes is getting frustrated with her. Jermaine and Sarah had already argued over the fish trap, and Wes doesn't want to lose his temper with her, so he tries to reason with her calmly. Although Sarah is still a young girl, she's as strong as an ox. Wes doesn't dare argue with her. He says, "I'm getting impatient. She's taking forever with that fish basket. It's been like 4 or 5 days now. I'm hungry and stressed out. I appreciate open communication, but Jeremy is already starving. For 10 days, we've only had water. We tried digging for cattail roots, but the permafrost is too hard for our small shovel." They couldn't dig at all, so they rummaged through deadwood, hoping to find bait for fishing. Fishing is simple, but finding bait in this freezing environment is tough. Luckily, Granny Tracy found a worm, and Jeremy immediately started making a fishing rod. This worm might change their fate. If not, the show crew might as well come to collect their bodies. Trout are swimming in the water. With worms, you'll have endless fish to eat. The Kai team is also weakening, with Joe's heart rate continuously spiking. While fishing, Joe was dragged away by the doctor, leaving only Kai and Gary. On the surface, it seems like they're down one person, but in reality, it's the same. Joe was useless to the team, lying in the shelter all day waiting for food and drink. Except for being somewhat useful at night, he contributed nothing. Kai and Gary went back to the shore to fish. The weather warmed up, and they hoped to catch some fish. They spent hours fishing every day but caught nothing. Suddenly, Gary felt a bite. Sure enough, he caught a big fish. This fish was so large that one hand couldn't hold it. Kai looked at the fish in his hand, unsure of what to do for a moment. This was their second successful catch, and Gary felt a glimmer of hope for survival. They roasted the fish on sticks, and soon it was ready. The fish was enough to fill both of them up. The meat was tender and juicy, and they couldn't stop eating. By evening, the wind picked up, and it started snowing. Wes and his group huddled in the shelter, hearing footsteps outside, too scared to sleep. Occasionally, they heard growls. Wes guessed it was a wild animal. Isn't that obvious? If it's not a wild animal, what else could it be? A wild ghost. A feline was prowling outside. On the 11th day, Jermaine noticed animal tracks on the ground early in the morning. They guessed it was a lion, which was extremely dangerous. Wearing fur all the time, they could easily be mistaken for prey. They had to be very cautious of a lion ambush while hunting. The wind was strong today. Jermaine checked the rabbit traps daily, but the lion's presence last night made him anxious. The traps were perfect, but no rabbits were caught. Maybe the rabbits here were just too carefree. If any rabbit had a mortgage or car loan, it would be desperate enough to fall into Jermaine's trap. Jermaine was hunting nearby and felt something following him. In fact, the lion had already spotted him and was preparing to ambush. Jermaine saw lion tracks on the ground and quickly left the area in fear. After eating grilled fish, Kai and Gary returned to the shelter, feeling energized. Joe would definitely be the target of their venting. Gary and Kai sat discussing, and Joe missed the days when Joe was around. During the days of radio calisthenics, Kai got a fish bone stuck in his teeth and called a doctor to check it out. The doctor examined him and found it was just a mouth ulcer, nothing serious. Jack was exploring nearby with an axe, planning to make a death trap. The squirrels around were too arrogant, so Jack decided to kill them with a rock. He picked a flat stone and cut a branch. Using the stone and branch, he made an automatic device. As soon as a squirrel sensed the stick, the stone would crush it. Hopefully, this stone would bring him some squirrels. Sarah was gathering wood nearby when she noticed her throat felt sore. Could it be the wolf meat virus? She carried the wood back to their now spacious and well-developed shelter, feeling short of breath. She called for the handsome doctor, saying she needed help breathing. The doctor soon arrived with his equipment. First things first, let's check your blood pressure and heart rate, the doctor said. He noted that altitude sickness was common in this high-altitude area. Sarah's diagnosis was high-altitude pulmonary edema, where increased vascular pressure causes fluid to leak into the lungs, a potentially life-threatening condition if untreated. The doctor advised her to rest immediately if she felt short of breath. Who knew collecting firewood could lead to this? Meanwhile, Jeremy and Grandma Tracy had been fishing by the creek for hours without any luck, so Jeremy decided to try a different spot. Fishing in a deeper spot where there are more fish. They set up many fishing rods here, their eyes filled with hope. He kept a close watch on the rods, and finally, he caught a fish. Although it was a small fish, it was still protein. This thumb-sized fish was enough to fill Granny up. Their successful catch boosted their confidence, and soon they caught another fish. This one was bigger than the first. Granny, who hadn't eaten in 10 days, could hardly wait to devour it raw. They were overjoyed. Meanwhile, Wes's team was still working on the fish trap, which might take another 2 days. In a few days, they could go home. It seemed he wanted to take the fish trap home to catch fish. After 5 days of work, he finally finished it. Shala felt incredibly proud, but Black Brother looked at him with disdain. They took the fish trap to the stream, planning to set it there. This was Shala's precious creation. Wes carefully placed it in the water, knowing Shala would be upset if anything went wrong, even at this close distance. They had to wade into the water to set the trap properly. It took some creativity to come up with this, and Wes seemed to respect Shala's effort, given it took 5 days to make. Meanwhile, the Jack team had perfected their shelter, stocked with firewood and airtight. With no worries about food or drink, they were quite comfortable. Their traps hadn't caught anything, but one wolf was enough to last until the end. Vass helped remake the traps, hoping for one more big meal. Jeremy's team returned to the shelter to grill fish. The shelter is set up for grilling fish, and now they can also cook meat. There's not much fish, but it's still protein. Jeremy, who had never tried trout before, was thrilled. After 10 days of hunger, even without seasoning, it tasted amazing. Grandma was very thankful to Jeremy, and they enjoyed the grilled fish together in the shelter. Wes's team is struggling the most. They have many members but don't work. It took them 5 days to make a fish trap, so they deserve to eat ants. Jermaine checked the rabbit traps and finally caught one. Either this rabbit has a mortgage and car loan, or the show crew arranged it. Maine proudly shows off the rabbit to Wes, feeling ecstatic. One rabbit is enough to satisfy them on the 10th day, and everyone gets to enjoy grilled meat. Wes looks at Jermaine with envy. Sarah is preparing the rabbit meat. Jermaine did a great job. There's not much meat, but if it were up to me, I'd make soup. They fry the rabbit meat in an iron pot. Just a few pieces of thigh meat smell delicious, filling the wilderness with the aroma of grilled meat. One bite is crispy and tastes like chicken. Today's grilled meat is their first proper meal since arriving. Kai and Gary also went out hunting. Kai's teeth were inflamed, so he was looking for some birch bark to chew on, which contains methyl salicylate to help with pain and inflammation. Gary was gathering wood nearby. These two girls were working very hard. At night, the wind picked up again, but perhaps they had adapted to the temperature here, and with some meat to eat, they didn't feel very cold. Their shelter was well built, so they didn't feel cold at all. On the 12th day, Sarah was milking in the morning. The wind was blowing hard outside, and it felt a bit chilly, but Jack dismissed it, saying it wasn't that cold. Sarah hid in her clothes and started crying, but after a few seconds, she put them back on because she really felt cold. She kept crying in the shelter because of what Jack said in the morning. She felt Jack's words hurt her more than the cold. Crying for hours over this? I can't believe it. This is a tough survival show. If you want to cry, go home. Vaz and Jack came back from their work. He's still crying even after Jack apologized, feeling deeply wronged. With just 2 days left, he's throwing a tantrum. Is he thinking of quitting or making his teammates feel guilty to share the prize? Voss thinks Sarah's lack of confidence is bad for survival. She's sulking, prompting them to call the doctor. But they only find Vaz and Jack sleeping. Sarah has already gone out. The doctor checks her, and the team is very worried about her health, especially with only 2 days left. If she has to quit due to her health, it would be a major setback. The checkup results were terrible. Sarah even has a fever. She needs further medical examination. Now Sarah is really struggling. Is the $100,000 prize slipping away? With just 2 days left, anyone would be devastated. Boz tried to comfort her, saying, "In my heart, you're not a loser. You just didn't get the prize. Winning or losing isn't what matters. What matters is whether you can get the prize." What surprises will the contestants bring us next? Stay tuned for the next episode.